Hi, I'm Lori Klein, and I am here today to talk to you about editing your short story rough draft. You've written a rough draft. You need to do something before you can get to that second draft. You need to really look closely at this piece of writing. That's what we're going to do today. Our goal for the day is to take this rough draft that you've done and move it to its next stage. We'll begin with a warm-up prompt just to get you writing, to get your juices flowing. We'll get some inspiration from the poem of the day. We will look closely at adverbs and weak words and get those out of your story. We'll eliminate passive voice, examine sentence length, eliminate any dialogue tag except for said. In this story, we're going to stick with said. We'll interrogate the action. Action is very difficult to write. Let's look at your action and see if it's doing what you need it to. You should have a metaphor, or maybe two, in your story. So let's take a look at how to really use literary devices to your advantage. After we do all of this, you'll be ready to write that second draft. Let's start with a prompt for the day. It's always good to start with writing to get your juices flowing. I want you to take a minute to open up a Google Doc and describe a character, real or imaginary, using only a description of the clothes this person wears. Turn off your computer now and take 5 minutes to answer this prompt. Our poem of the day is Cracks by E.A. MARKHAM. I wanted to find a poem that helped capture character and that talked a little bit about appearance. I would like E.A. MARKHAM to actually read this poem to you, so we'll have him do that.
Cracks. Then one morning you're tying your shoelaces, and there they are, 2 more than cracks in your favorite shoe, which couldn't have been there the day before. Or are you past observing details so close to home? And yes, for leather suddenly to give out without warning is unsettling, though, on reflection, this is how things happen. But how terrifying to base your philosophy on anticipating surprise and accidents. Nevertheless, the unease will not confine itself to shoes. So of course you go back to the bathroom mirror, remembering the betrayal in that hotel room when an unaccustomed arrangement of glass caught you unawares, showed you shapes your vanity never knew. You go back to the mirror and test your courage on a safe bit of self. Not quite as before, but it knows, surely, something the god of biology knows. This can't be replaced as easily as shoes. So what to do? You vow to take more care of the shoes.
Now our editing adventure begins. I'm going to take you through some steps that I would like you to follow on your Google Doc. Each of these steps is designed to take your short story to the next level. First of all, your story has to have a problem. Ask yourself, who's the main character in your story, and does he or she have a problem? Is there a story arc that explores, however subtly, whatever that is, the problem? I want you to actually write the problem, all caps, at the top of your Google Doc and tell me what the problem might be. For instance, in the story Bill, the problem was not obvious. The problem really was, who is Bill and does his life matter? The problem, interestingly enough, involved the reader. So when you think about your problem, consider that it might be a little out of the ordinary. Okay, so here's what I want you to do first. I want you to put your text through an online feedback editor. You're going to take the entire text and you're going to paste it into the box on this nifty computer editor and then hit the edit button. The site is editminion.com. Wow, look at all you can discover on this. I mean, do you have too many adverbs? Do you have weak words? Do you have frequently occurring words? Let me show you how this looks. This is what Edit Minion looks like. You can see at the top, we have some great categories, right? Adverbinator, weak words, said, passive voice, prepositions, homonyms, cliché, Shakespeare, Greek, Latin, Germanic, and dialogue. Now, I've clicked Shakespeare just because I have. It's Shakespeare, right? You can unclick any of these if you don't want to see them. They do advise you not to click Ambrose unless you have a pretty good connection and your computer is pretty high powered because it might crash your tab. So what you do here is you take your text, here's my cursor, and I'm going to paste in John Updike's story, Oliver's Evolution. And I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to hit edit. A little strunk and white attribution there, which is very fun. And here are the Minion analysis results. So you will see this with your own writing. So what it's going to tell you is how many adverbs, how many weak words, passive words, said alternatives, if you end with a preposition. It'll also show you your frequently occurring words. It's interesting that with is used so often, that Updike is using the prepositional phrase in that way. So here we go through the story. You can see helpfully that there are certain items that are highlighted. Was wearing and was the least complaining are both highlighted because they are potentially passive voice. And I would say that certainly this first one could be considered passive voice, but you wouldn't want to say the parents had the challenge of the child rearing wore thin for the parents or something like that. It wouldn't be the same tense. It wouldn't work. He was the least complaining is a similar situation. It's actually stating an adjective, something about him particularly. Really is highlighted as a weak word, and it should be. It should be. But in this case, really is being used by Updike to give us the voice of the narrator. The narrator is very matter of fact. He's trying to show us kind of the narrator's almost conversational tone with us. You can see here that we have 3 words that are highlighted in green that are words that are potential replacements for said. And it turns out that they're not. And so that's not really an issue in this particular case. You can see that the homonyms are highlighted in green, there and there, for instance, so that you can check them to make sure that they're what you want them to be. The 2 adverbs, slowly and widely, are fascinating, right? We would suggest trying to get rid of any adverbs that are not going to really help your story. Slowly spreading, though, gives us such a wonderful alliteration and view into Oliver. And widely spaced is a great way to describe the teeth, which then leads us to that nice little dash with the baby teeth after it. But this has been very helpful to look at a piece of writing in this way and to use Edit Minion. So take your piece and put it through it right now. See what you come up with, and then we will move on to the next part of our editing process. I'm going to ask you now to use Edit Minion to help you underline every adverb. So go into your Google Doc and actually underline the adverbs. Remember that an adverb is a word that modifies a verb. Sometimes it ends in ly, but not always. I want you to check and see if you need that adverb. Why describe someone as very tall? Why use the word very? How about towering, rangy, altitudinous. Take a minute right now, turn off the video, and underline every adverb. Now that you're back, we're going to look at those weak words. I want you to bold every weak word in your Google Doc. Make sure you're happy with these words. Get out a dictionary. The old dictionary can be super helpful to you. And an actual paper dictionary is sometimes even more helpful because it has some interesting possibilities that don't always appear online. If you use an online dictionary, I do suggest Merriam-Webster, which is decent. Now that you've eliminated your weak words, make sure that you get rid of passive voice. Make sure that every sentence is active. Don't say the apple was eaten by the boy. Say the boy ate the apple. Put the subject at the beginning of a sentence. Don't freak out too much about sentences ending with a preposition. Edit Minion will mark those, but that's not really an issue here. You're not writing a formal paper, and sometimes ending a sentence with a preposition is just the way that people actually speak. So stop the video and go and see what you can do about passive voice. Now it's time to look at your sentence length. What about your sentences? It's actually true that when you are writing action, short sentences are so much more effective. When you are writing description, long sentences can be quite beautiful. I want you to mark this on the top of your Google document. What is your longest sentence? What is your shortest sentence? Write them on the document at the top. And then, what is your average sentence length? What does Edit Minion tell you about that? So stop the video and tell me about your sentences. Okay, the next thing we should get rid of are any dialogue tags that are not said. Stop with replied, questioned, demanded. What happens is that a reader will pay attention to your fancy dialogue tag and not the dialogue. And we want to get just to the dialogue. So please replace those. Clichés. If Edit Minion marked clichés for you, get rid of them. In a flash fiction story, you shouldn't use any word too often. Hold your horses, for Pete's sake. Take some time out now to look at your action. Don't write stage directions. That's a real temptation. And let's face it, writing action is difficult. But if you say he put out his arms to hug her, I'm wondering how else he would hug her, right? Or she opened the car door and got in. How else would she get in the car? Can't she just get in the car? You need to cut that out. If you're doing a truly short story, let's pare it down. Let's make it as brisk and interesting as we possibly can. Next, I want you to think about metaphors. So don't go crazy with metaphors. It's a short story. You should have one truly lovely metaphor, maybe two, but you kind of have to convince me that you deserve two. Metaphors are tricky business. They are, in many ways, what is at the heart of writing. To be an excellent, amazing writer, you need to make a connection with your reader. And a way to describe something to any reader is to describe it with something that the reader knows. So if you make that connection with a metaphor, it can be a beautiful way to reach across to your reader. If you do too often, it can be tedious. Here's an important note. Technology can help us be better writers by using data to search out our mistakes. There are quite a few really interesting editing tools available online. Another fascinating one is slickwrite.com, which you might want to try. Spend some time with that, experimenting and seeing what they're telling you about your own writing. Now, you're just getting a snapshot of your prose, though. You're not getting more than that. Is your story boring? Are your characters less than believable? Well, that's another problem. And that's a problem that we are going to solve through peer editing and teacher editing. Now write that second draft and have some fun. Spend some time with your words. Think about what you want to say about your characters. Think about how your action moves the story. Good luck.